They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat.
It's been a few months since the eating the cats meme swept the internet, but the real underlying problem persists. Immigration is a top concern for the incoming Trump administration, and it all starts in Springfield, Ohio.
The real story is a predictable conflict created by a broken immigration system, full of real tragedies receiving far less coverage due to the difficult nature of this discussion.
Everyone is talking about the death of ducks and cats in this town, but I'd like to talk about the death of one very special person, my mother-in-law, Kathy Heaton. On December 1st, I received a phone call that changed my life forever. She was collecting her trash can from her driveway when a car struck and killed her instantly. A task she had done over 2,000 times, spanning 4 decades in Springfield. That morning, though, a Haitian immigrant was allegedly driving recklessly when he struck and killed her.
It would be wrong to blame all Haitians for that terrible outcome.
But it would be stupid not to notice that increasing the population of a town by 33%, giving them driver's licenses, and underinvesting in assimilation practices wouldn't have consequences when you import 22,000 people into a town of 60,000 residents.
It goes beyond just dangerous driving, too. It's the character and the feel of a hometown that is changing due to new arrivals.
I'm angry when I see our businesses and recreational areas littered with garbage left by people that do not know or understand our laws and culture and are making no attempt to learn about them. And let me be clear, this is not about race. This is about people being given the privilege of coming here from another country and having no respect for our people, our land, or our life's work.
This is a problem of culture, not race. A bigger, more human problem anytime two cultures collide. It's happened before.
In Thomas Sowell's best-selling work, Black Rednecks and White Liberals, Professor Sowell tells the story of how migration of Southern blacks to the North and the West during Jim Crow caused tremendous strife within the communities they migrated to.
Property crime, violence, and other forms of illegal activity spiked, and people responded with speech.
Southern blacks themselves were not a simple story either. Their culture, Sowell argues, was influenced by both the legacy of slavery, the Jim Crow South, and the poor whites they spent generations living alongside, mainly from Irish and Scottish origins.
Southern blacks developed a unique culture different from that of Northern blacks, and the clash of the two detailed by Sowell explains much of our current racial politics. It has more to do with culture than race.
These were people primarily in the black community who lived in those areas for several generations before Southern blacks moved in and complained about the culture and practices, not the intrinsic racial characteristics of the new arrivals.
What is strange is how this is a problem now confronting all Western nations, not just an American problem.
And the responses from corporate media and governments pattern the same. All across these diverse countries, we see similar situations arising.
In Ireland this year, large groups of natives protested immigrants imported into their communities via immigration centers. Ireland and EU policy that gave them housing and funded their livelihoods at times, blocking streets to prevent buses of migrants from coming into rural communities. Some went so far as to firebomb a construction site of a new migrant community center using a drone.
The scale of impact on Ireland has been substantial. Adding 5% to a country of 5 million is a lot of people for a small island country.
The government has a policy to disperse this impact among rural areas. For many of these rural communities, a couple hundred migrants have a similar effect in terms of the proportion to Springfield.
After decades of loose and unmanaged migration, in this year's German elections, the brand new youth movement party AfD gained 34% of the seats in the German parliament, alongside a new viral meme song.
Ausländer raus! Deutschland in Deutschland! Ausländer raus!
Can you guess what their immigration policy perspective is? This, of course, was claimed by corporate news as only racism, and not the expression of sentiment by the native population being flooded with migrants.
Germans believe, from experience, these folks have little chance to assimilate and feel their culture is at risk.
This is a human problem, one that begs us not to be ignored in the name of political correctness. It's about culture, not racial essentialism or religious bigotry.
We need a more mature immigration policy and public discussion of these problems, uncensored by social media companies and the corporate press.
Germans, Irish, English, and other ethnic groups have a claim to their future as valid as the case being made for compassion to immigrants.
The disappearance of their culture, institutions, and ethnic identity would be a loss for the world. But simply saying that is considered a third rail in their own countries. No wonder people feel unheard.
And on top of that, the very same government facilitating the import of immigrants across the West, or also using your tax dollars to make that happen.
Immediately putting them on welfare, finding them, or even building them housing while natives face a housing crisis and inflation.
The immigrants themselves are a victim in all of this too. Many factions in D.C. and Brussels do not want strong borders and clear legal pathways for immigrants because they have domestic policy goals that are more important to them than the welfare of the migrants and domestic populations.
As a consequence, we see welfare for migrants, but not assimilation. We see ghettoization and not integration with the larger society.
And the tough reality is that serves the needs of both the left and right elite.
The U.S. is different from Europe.
E pluribus unum, out of many one, was first featured on the original 1776 design of the Great Seal of the United States,
and was formally adopted by the U.S. Congress as our nation's official motto in 1782.
The Latin phrase reminds us that a single nation emerged out of the original 13 colonies.
The phrase became a symbol of America as a place where anyone can come and build a better life.
But it would mean that they would have to allow themselves to be changed by the culture and customs of America, just as they themselves would change their new home. This is what people mean by assimilation.
Haitians will do that too. Most studies suggest only one generation needs to pass before the new arrivals adopt a full language, fluency, and American cultural institutions.
Immigrants have contributed economically and culturally to the American way of life. Never forget, governments have a propensity to cover up their own failures by blaming outsiders.
However, those realities have to be balanced with the fact that our culture and institutions have become weak and that American identity is losing its meaning.
We need on-the-ground solutions that assist immigrants in their assimilation to their new home and vetting to be sure that criminals aren't hidden among the populations.
We need to ensure that our asylum seekers have a case and they're not skirting the law by claiming asylum when they are in fact motivated by other things.
We need to get a better understanding of and potentially crack down on international NGOs that appear to be working to exacerbate these problems in the name of compassion by assisting in illegal immigration and physically importing populations into Western countries against the will of local citizens.
Immigration policy in the United States and the West must get real. We need strong borders,
strong assimilation incentives,
and a less Byzantine legal immigration system capable of separating the wheat from the chaff.
And we must make strong again the key questions of identity and culture. What binds us together?
What makes our country unique?
What values do we believe in as a group?
We must have an answer deeper and more meaningful than the status quo. To invite immigrants into our community with the confidence that we will continually be transforming into one local community and one country out of many origins.
But we need to have the confidence to insist on assimilation and what matters and the humility and compassion required to learn from our new neighbors.
And just as it is with poverty and violence, we need to look at the root causes of the migration crisis globally.
Why have large groups of migrants suddenly appeared across the Western world and disrupt local ways of life in mass waves?
In our next video, we'll be diving into at least one of the common causes: U.S. foreign policy. We are creating our own problems.